Good morning and welcome back to Spidz YouTube. Today we're going to go over our CDS Season 2 Week 5 games against Cephalopod, who, if you watched the interview last week that was on the official CDS channel, you will know that this was the scariest week for me. I think Cephalopod's easily got the best lineup. He's my favorite to win, followed by probably Shardox, and maybe followed by G Sensational. And this week definitely concerned me quite a bit, and we'll talk about why and what was so scary about fighting Cephalopod this week. My team, as we've discussed many times, this is the champions I've drafted. Gwen, Leona, Draven, Nilla, Kennen, Lucian, Sejuani, Kaisar, Gangplank, and the Poro King. Farsparrow F6, captained by Cephalopod, has got Vayne, Kindred, Soraka, Zillion, and Echo. Ornn, Rumble, Sets and Jack, and then Ahri. They've got access to every region with a double up on the Ionia, but obviously by every region except Noxus and Bandle City are mutually exclusive for what they're trying to do because it's in the same champion, just like for us, Ionia and Bandle City are mutually exclusive. Now, looking at this, you'll see some obvious choices, right? They've got Jack, Set, Echo, Zillion, and Rumble Vayne. These are three real decks that they have got, and you might think into most opponents that you can just prep for all of these. Like if you're fighting Slay, for example, Slay brings the same decks every week. Cephalopod, if it was like Slay and brought the same decks every week, these would be the three decks that he would bring. You could also look a little bit deeper and say, hey, you know, Vayne Ornn isn't that bad. There was like a Skathos pile that was sort of very similar to Vayne Ornn. Kindred Ionia has been pretty decent historically. It's sort of like Kindred Viego, but if you remove Viego, you can still use the Ionia package. Vayne Jack, Tumbling Barnacles, Tumbling maybe of Eye of God is not too bad at all. There's like a good mid-range presence there that you're able to run with. But you can't scout Seth. It's just impossible. In week 1 against L Games, he brought Vayne Ornn, Shurima, Shellfolk, and Ahri Targon Elusives. In week 2, he brought Zillion Echo, Vayne Rumble, and Cosmic Call. In week 3, he brought Cosmic Call, Jackset, and Timelines with Echo Ornn. And week 4, he brought Jackset, Vayne Rumble, and Ahri Kindred. There's some general themes, like he has brought Vayne Rumble twice, he's brought Cosmic Call twice, he's brought Ahri weird decks twice, he's brought Jackset twice. There are things you can say, but I can't say with full confidence that he's going to bring those decks into me. There's no reason to target a single deck. For other enemy gamers, targeting Jackset would be an extremely reliable way to win the video game, or Vayne Rumble, Echo Zillion. And you could probably build a lineup that targets all three of those and is able to win in the same way that you could do against Slay, right? If you remember against Slay, we targeted Kayn Aatrox, but you're able to target Kayn Aatrox and Shyvana, not Shyvana, well, yeah, well, Shyvana Dragons or Quinn Aatrox, or all of these things, right? You can target mid-range and beat Slay. You could have, in theory, said target these and beat Ceph, but not for Cephalopod. He will bring completely random stuff. Cephalopod is also an alumnus of Spidz YouTube. He enjoys watching the Spidz YouTube, and I watch a lot of Ceph YouTube. His video on this game is already out, and it is really worth watching just before the gameplay. The way he analyzes trying to beat me is really, really fascinating, and I think it's worth watching. I think it's very interesting, especially if you watched a lot of Spidz YouTube. You will get a lot out of Ceph YouTube. It's a little bit faster and more zoomery. You've just got me talking with some fucking Google slides. Like, I am very laid back. Cephalopod's a little bit more excitable and you know, things happening on the screen. But I still recommend watching it because I think it's pretty good content and it'll analyze quite well. But as a Spidz YouTuber and alumnus, he also knows that I like to target single decks and build incredibly favored lineups into single decks, or maybe just broad archetypes like mid-range, right? You might be familiar with this graph, where control beats aggro, aggro beats combo, combo beats control, and mid-range somewhat comes across in the middle, right? I'm gonna do a little bit of a twist on this graph. Complete random bullshit beats over-teched monstrosities, over-teched monstrosities beats playing good decks, and playing good decks beats random bullshit. I want to explain this a little bit. If you're on like a 3 best deck lineup for something like an open, you will beat complete random nonsense, right? Your lineup of like Janna, Nilla, Jax, Ornn, Teemo, Yuumi, Elusives will beat this random guy that's on what's a deck that's standard legal that's weird. Kalista Ornn, right? You're gonna beat Kalista Ornn. Poor Kalista Ornn, their spear, their Shadow Isle spear weapon is not good enough, but you're gonna beat that. But complete random BS is going to beat some sort of overtech monstrosity. So Kalista Ornn is going to beat this, like, you know... Oh, it's a good example. Kalista Ornn will beat the deck that's teched against burn by running 3 Star Shapings, 3 Rejuvenating Breezes, 3 Solari Sunforges, 3 Stellarcorns, that sort of thing. Like, if your way of beating aggro is to just play the most healing, you know, deck with a bunch of Targon cards, like the Fangs, right? Your complete random bullshit deck's gonna beat that. And this Overtech Monstrosity deck is gonna beat the good deck, right? Annie Jin fantastic deck. It's gonna lose to someone playing 3 copies of Solari Sunforger and like Expansive Protection to beat stuns, right? It's weird, but it'll work, and it'll do well in that matchup. So, there's Ceph and there's I. I am saying Cephalopod typically will play an Overtech Monstrosity. Now, this is hyperbolization. More accurately, I think Cephalopod will have a strong deck like Echo Zillion that has a power turn on turn 4, has a power turn on turn 6 after Voices, and is able to pressure and not win on turn 6 necessarily, but get to the point where the rest of the game is sort of dealing with this tempo spike, right? If you tech that deck too much, instead of it being turn 4 and turn 6, it's moving to turn 6 and turn 8. Because by teching your deck, you're slowing down the power in order to create extra power for given matchups, right? That's what teching is, right? Now, you can do that to a minor extent, add like 3 or 4 cards that are going to ruin your entire thing, or you could change like 50% of your deck to be overly teched. And so that's what I meant by Cephalopod being in the overly teched monstrosities. So if you just look at this graph, I should be a complete random bullshit, right? That's the way to beat Cephalopod. Now, I'm going to update this graph a little bit. These numbers aren't 100% wins, right? Just in the same way that the aggro control and mid-range one wasn't. Complete random BS only beats Overtech Monstrosities maybe 70% of the time. Overtech Monstrosities probably beats the good decks only 70% of the time. If they're good enough, they're good for a reason, right? Ikato won with Jax On, and Jax On was probably targeted quite a lot in that open. And playing the good decks beats random bullshit. And I think playing the good decks beats random bullshit a little bit more than all of this other stuff happens, right? So if you want to move this around, I think this is slightly more accurate. Playing the good decks is probably better. Like this matchup here, this 85% one is probably just more accurate. This obviously it's just an abstraction, right? This graph is not science. It is, I've made all these numbers up. I pulled them out of my ass. But this general theme, I think, applies generally. Now, the less, you know, black and white you view this, the more the numbers will break down and be more granular. But if you just view this as black and white, I think this is generally accurate. Now, Cephalopod could see this, right? Theoretically, you could say, oh, Cephalopod's going to see this, and Cephalopod's going to play the good decks. And now I'm going to lose. Now Cephalopod's got an 85% win rate into me. That's not good. I think it's more likely that Cephalopod had to study, but you will find that Cephalopod did do the good decks, and I was on complete random bullshit and lost. Or lost the matchup, rather. Lost the matchup charts. Now, you can abstract this even further. We're going to stick with this analogy for a bit. There's one more aspect that should be analyzed, which is what if we both bring the same thing? If we both bring the good decks, or both bring Overtech Monstrosities, or both bring complete random bullshit, who wins? Now, I had too much fun with the warp tool, so I know this looks a little bit ugly. But if we both bring complete random nonsense, I think we have about a 50% chance, right? If I bring 3 decks that he doesn't expect, he brings 3 decks that I don't expect, it's just going to be completely random and 50-50. If we both bring super over-tech stuff, all the techs are going to miss, and it's going to be, again, 50-50. But my good decks are things like Red Gwen, Plunder, and Cephalopod's good decks are things like Echo Jinx, Vayne Rumble, and they will beat my good decks. So, to some extent, I abstractly am inherently worse than what Cephalopod's doing lineup-wise, right? So I'm in an awkward position. I'm uncertain how to create an overtech monstrosity into an enigma of an enemy gamer. I can't tell what goes on in Ceph's mind. He's a crazy person. So I don't know how to overtech. I don't win if we both do good decks. So the most alluring option to me was to just bring 3 complete utter nonsense with no regard for what Cephalopod might bring. If I bring 3 decks, it's going to, in theory, be the best line for me. So these are my 3 decks. The first one is Cythria Matron. Lucian Gwen, you play Cythria, you play Matron, and you have a good time. I love this deck. This is one of my big loves in LoR. When Cythria first came out, or not even when Cythria first came out, when Prismatics first came out, my very first epic Prismatic, or maybe my second, was Spectral Matron. And because of that, I played maybe like 50, 60 games of Matron Tiana Crown Guard. And I think Cythria Lady of Clouds might not have been out in the game yet. And then the next expansion, Cythria Lady of Clouds, comes out. My timeline might be a little bit wrong, but I played a fuck ton of Matron Tiana. And then when Cythria Lady of Clouds came out, I played a fuck ton of Matron Cythria Lady of Clouds. And so this was a return to happiness for me. This deck is not built particularly well, you might notice, and Cephalopod points this out in his video. He doesn't like the Spirit Leech and the Glimpse Beyond because my only things that I'm giving up are Fading Icon. And I agree. I have done this version on ladder, and I have been doing really well on Eternal Ladder with this version. I think Hapless Aristocrat is just a card I forgot about. Ceaseless Sentry is another card I forgot about. This deck, unironically, feels really good on ladder. I've been beating Jax-Ornn and Nasus with it because you're just bigger than Jax-Ornn and Nasus. And if they try and Atro, you just give your single combat for the Atros. But also, they can't really get you down low enough if you just run enough copies of Blocking Badger Bear and Ceaseless Sentry. And with Prospect and Mobilize and Islander, you are getting turn 6, turn 7 Matrons relatively often, and as long as you just play it on your attack token, you're fine. Never play Matron on your non-attack token, unless you didn't use Islander, and even then, I still think you should do it on your attack token. It just gives you more tempo, typically. But yeah, this is one of the decks. It was completely random. It is at disregard to anything they could possibly bring. It's just random. The next deck was Kennen Kaisar Shellfolk. My head is unfortunately covering Quicksand and Rite of Negation. This is the exact same list that I brought last time. I didn't edit it at all. I didn't practice it on ladder because I didn't want Cephalopod to know that I was playing it. And it'll be part of my downfall. This deck is unrefined. This deck is unrefined. And you'll notice that that unrefinedness is part of what happens in the matchup. This is my last deck, completely random. Sunburn. I've never played Sunburn. I've never been a big Sunburn believer. I've never played Sunburn. I've played like 3 games of this deck before. But Cephalopod would maybe have expected, in general, Might stuff, but likely was not expecting this specific Leona Noxus. I've never been a Leona Noxus fanatic. Whenever I play Leona, it's always been like Shadow Isles or Shurima. Maybe Freljord. I did Freljord for quite a little while, and I've never put Noxus with this too much. I did play a lot of Draven Taric out of the way back in the old days, but I hadn't played this deck much, so I don't think Cephalopod was specifically bringing this, but also, it's random, right? If he's teching for Gwen, which I thought he was pretty likely to be teching for Gwen, this deck doesn't care about Gwen that much, and this deck will probably do okay into weird Gwen-y stuff, because Gwen killing stuff does not kill Leona unless it's like Soul Harvest, right? Anyway, Cephalopod ended up bringing Zillion Echo, which, yikes, is not overly teched. It doesn't have Mystic Shot, which is interesting. It's got a, like, 3 Quicksand and a Rat Engage, which is interesting, but this isn't overly teched. This isn't some sort of deck that's 2 moves slower, because it's running a bunch of, like, you know, Cephalopod tech cards, like Explorers and Rocket Barrages, which is what I was hoping to see. Then he brought Kindred on, which is Endure, and this is also not teched. It's not running a bunch of slow bullshit, like, I don't know, Winter's Breath to beat some sort of tech thing. You know, Winter's Breath beats Harrowing, so he might have added that to his deck, and I wasn't beating that, right? Then he brought Jack-Set, which is also not teched. It's just all of these decks are just good mid-range decks. And I wasn't expecting that. If you go back to our sheet, I didn't add it to the slide where I wanted to. We go back to this. He played the good decks, and I played complete random BS, and it sucked. Now, I played 2 combo decks, and the combo decks were trying to beat, in general, like Cephalopod being a little bit slow and uninteractive 2 combos, right? It's really hard to tech for a combo you're not expecting, right? Such as Cithria Matron. But that's just not what happened in these matchups. He didn't tech for that, and that's sort of unfortunate. I'm not going to steal Cephalopod's thunder too much. He did make a video about his own deck, so if you want to watch that, go ahead. But I want to point out the first thing that I noticed when looking at this was that Quicksand, Glimpse, Hate Spike, and Spirit's Refuge are all really, really good into me. They all deal with cards like Gwen and Draven and Sejuani really, really well, because I need to attack with these cards, and then they just do this and deal with it, right? I think this is very, very heads up. I would have liked to see maybe more Conks. Conk seemed like a really good card into me, or maybe like Unworthy Soul. But yeah. Anyway, we get 2-0'd. I'm going to spoil it now. You'll know in about 5 minutes anyway when we watch the games. I get 2-0'd. Some reflection on this week. Yeah, I just need to bring the good decks. Like, at the end of the day, you know, if I had brought a decent deck, I might have had a better chance into these decks. Like, you know, I could have brought Sejuani and maybe it would have done better into Kindred on, or, you know, even just edit Lucian Gwen a little bit to have the cards that I ended up adding, which was this version as opposed to this version. That's about it. Cephalopod ends up winning the game, and he won the matchup thing. I think he did a good job with preparing for me. Even if he didn't really hit his target, he knew that like overly slowing down his decks wasn't enough. And you can see Cephalopod talk about that in his video, right? Slowing down his decks too much just wasn't a good enough plan. He wanted to be linearly good, and he ended up being linearly good. That's about it. We'll go over the games, but there's not too much to go over, as you will see. It was a very staunch 2-0 where he banned the Leona Draven deck, and then I'm running combo decks into his aggro decks. It wasn't worth it. That's it. All right, let's go over the games. I'm going to be doing the thing where I walk through it slowly. I'm not going to be showing everything. There is one turn I'm probably going to show in full, maybe two, but we're just going to go over the games. All right. I end up banning this deck. This is after a discussion with some of the Tron guys. We ended up saying that this might be just their best deck in general, and like these decks are slightly brickier, right? Like this deck can brick probably the most. There's 3 copies of On that you don't want. There's a bunch of weird hands where you don't have early game or you don't have late game and it just sort of falls apart. And I like keeping Echo Zillion up just in case Echo Zillion does not draw Echo on turn 4. You will notice that they draw Echo on turn 4 here. But that was the hope. That was the desire. Okay. Bans go through. They ban that deck. We start with Ken and Kaisar. Let's look at our mulligan. Okay, none of these cards say Shellfolk, and none of these cards say Valley of Imitation, so I'm not allowed to keep them. That's just how this deck works. We end up getting 2 Shellfolks, a Condense, and Kaisar, which is not a way to survive the early game. We will need to draw early game survival cards, but that's what we get. End up drawing Bursting Backpack, and then Shapestone, and then Pokestick. I decide... I'm not going to focus on what they're doing too much. I decide to copy this unit so that I can actually block something. And also look for Valley of Imitation. And I also need to look for more predicts. You actually do need predicts to win with this. The combo is not just have these 2 cards, you also need your predicts. So I decide to copy this to try and find a blocker. I end up finding the Valley and the Group Shot. This was a tough, I'm going to say this one more time, tough decision. Let's explain why. They have the attack token on turn 6. So if they're going to open attack on turn 6, having Valley or not having Valley is almost a non-question, right? For I can do double Shellfolk, 1 on turn 6, 1 on turn 7, and probably feel fine. That's not exactly 100% true into things like a Chrono Break or maybe some forms of Burn. Keep in mind that Group Shot is saving me from the exact same amount of damage that a Mystic Shot does because I'm killing this unit. Or even more if they have a Voices on the field. While this only helps if they don't open attack on 6. And into my deck, it's hard for them not to open attack on 6, especially if I've got a Valley on the field. Like, they're not going to let me do Valley plus Shellfolk on turn 6 if they got the attack token. So what this card says, basically, by picking this, is that I am going to survive a turn 6 open attack and be able to win the game. Right? That's what I'm claiming by picking Valley of Imitation. Picking Group Shot would instead be saying, I am going to not survive an open attack on turn 6. I will win on turn 7, and I will try and delay the game until I get to turn 7. That is a tough question to ask against a deck like Cephalopods. Now, in this position, I have taken 5 damage on turn 4. I know I am taking, at minimum, 7 damage on turn 4. Sorry, I've taken 5 damage on turn 2. I'm going to take 7 damage on turn 4. Now, I can reduce that with the blocker that I've just created, the Forsaken Bakai, that blocks this. So you can go this down to 5. And if I take Group Shot, I can maybe go this down to 3. But there's also no reason for Cephalopod not to develop Echo or not to develop Voices or even multiple units, right? I think it is reasonable to say that I will take around 7 damage anyway on turn 4. So if we go through that, that means I am almost certainly at 8 health on their turn 5 attack, right? This is all that's going through my brain at the time. I could probably hit play and you could probably hear me talk about this. Let's say I'm at around 8 health by their turn 6 attack. How am I surviving this? Is Group Shot part of that survival process? I think the method by which I survive this involves drawing extra units and possibly drawing Quicksand and possibly drawing maybe a Rite of Negation. And I don't know if Group Shot is helping me enough. I think Cephalopod is still likely killing me on turn 6 anyway. But Valley allows me, if they don't have Echo, for me to survive, right? It's sort of weird. I think, like, if they have Echo, I don't know if Group Shot is letting me beat Echo hands enough. I'm not killing Echo. I have to block Echo every single time. And Group Shot is going to be preventing maybe 4 damage. Keep in mind, if I don't kill this unit, they're going to override it, right? So it's probably really only preventing 2 damage, this Group Shot. While not having Valley and giving them the extra turn can be a little bit awkward. Keep in mind that after they attack, I can do, if I have enough predicts, I can probably do Valley into Shellfolk, and then if they want a Mystic Shot, I might be able to find my Rite of Negation during the combo, right? Because it'll cost 3 mana at the time. I don't know. I think this is a tough decision where I could see people going for Group Shot, realizing that they're going to be killed really quickly. But it becomes a bet of, if they have Echo, can we survive? And I think the answer is if they don't have Echo, we can survive. And if they do have Echo, can we survive? I don't know if Group Shot is the reason I'm surviving. I don't know if that would change things. And we're going to go to that turn, because I do have Echo into Voices. And I will see if Group Shot is enough. But let's go through the game. Spent a long time thinking. They play some cards. I play some cards. They play Echo. Oh, I spent a long time thinking whether I should Pokey Stick now or Pokey Stick later. If I Pokey Stick now, I could try and find Quicksand. Or maybe Group Shot. Which could help save damage. But my other thinking was maybe I want Pokey Stick to be defensive later on, right? For their next attack, right? Is saving 2 damage now better than using this to save 2 damage on a future turn? Against, again, the same attack. Or maybe even better. I decide that... How do I put this? From memory, I decide that my next 2 turns are invariably this plus this anyway. I'm not really allowing myself to play anything else. I don't know. This is definitely a weird position. Maybe I should listen to my in-game commentary. I'm gonna pivot. I'm gonna listen to my in-game commentary because I'm curious what I'm saying here, because I actually don't remember. And I'm sure that I will listen to myself and know everything.
Hi, Sage. And I don't think I'm supposed to Pokey. What if they've got, like, Absolver? I guess I'm supposed to Pokey this turn. It saves 2 damage, while a Pokey on a future temporarily saves no damage. If they've got Absolver, they win though, right? I'm never beating Absolver unless I Shellfolk Pog. Am I supposed to Pokey now, or Pokey on their turn 6 attack? I'm taking 7 damage if I Pokey now. And I'm almost certainly taking more than 7 on the turn after, because I'm going to play Kaisara as a blocker, likely. I could take 9 now and Pokey later. I think I'm possibly supposed to Pokey now. I'll Pokey later. Well, I'll Pokey bonus deck, but I'll Pokey now. I think I have to. I'd love if I didn't find, if I found another unit or something. Cannon, yeah, okay.
Interesting. Okay, I don't know what's going on in my mind, I think, in the end. I think at this position, I should admit that I'm losing to Absolver almost no matter what, except for excess draws of something like the Quicksand, right? And so the question just becomes, do I want to, like, as I said, save 2 damage now or save a possible 2 damage later? Because at the end of the day, I'm always killing one of these units, right, with the Pokey Stick, or one of these is always dying. And I don't think clearing their board is really a relevant question against their deck when I'm not interacting with their board anyway, right? Like, typically you Pokey Stick early because you're saving 2 damage now and 2 damage later because you're permanently removing the unit, but that's just not the case against this deck. So I think doing Pokey was fine. I overthought. They get Hexite Crystal. We end up getting Cannon into Lightning Rush, which lets us do interesting things where we get to kill Voices. I decide to attack just in case they let me get 2 damage. It doesn't really matter because I'm always killing Voices here. I have to. I can't ever imagine a world where I'm not killing Voices right now. Anyway, they have Absolver and they win, right? This isn't really a game. That's it. If my deck list was different, could I have won? If I had less of Bursting Backpack, could I have won? If I had less of this card, could I have won? Right? If these cards were things like Conchologist, I may have had a win, right? I've never built Kaisar. This is still the same list that that RPG gave me a couple of back when we were fighting Jason Sensational, and I just hadn't edited it because I've never built Shellfolk, and I'm going to be honest, it didn't even occur in my mind that you could change how Shellfolk was built for certain matchups. That just wasn't something I was thinking about, right? So yeah, we lose because I didn't tech it properly. All right, next matchup is Cytherea Matron versus Endure. This is our mulligan, and I think I will probably keep... Let's listen. Actually, I remember being curious about this mulligan. Let's see what I think. I'm curious.
Ooh, this is an interesting hand. Am I still keeping? Fading Icon's really good as a blocker. Matron is my win card. I guess I don't want Mobilize that badly. I'd rather have Cytherea. And Vengeance seems important for the card. Maybe I'm supposed to cut Vengeance. I don't know. I feel like I need it. I'm gonna mulligan like this. But Cephalopod has like 110% one. I'm not kidding myself here.
Okay, I think this is an issue with my lack of experience on Cytherea Matron at this time. I've played like, I don't know, 20 more games of it since. I definitely am more comfortable with the deck. I also overestimated how much of their deck was an Endure deck. If you watch Cephalopod's video, his deck is not really an Endure deck. It's a Shadow Isles aggro deck that just happens to have Endure in it. And I think I was overly respecting Endure by keeping this Vengeance. I just didn't need to. I think I should have tried to find other cards. I think looking for things like that would have been a little bit better. I think that keeping Mobilize is almost invariably correct here. It's less so about making your Matron cheaper, and more so that making it that the turn before you play Matron, you can spend 5 mana to develop 7 mana worth of units. Something like that, right? I think that's way more prominent about the Mobilize. Anyway, they're about to play Spirits Unleashed, and I realized this and play Dark Aegis. I don't think I should have played this knowing ahead of time how much they liked Spirits Unleashed in their deck. I just didn't know that their deck wasn't actually really an Endure deck. It's mostly a Spirits Unleashed deck that just happens to have Endure as top end because it makes sense in the deck. So I do this to play around the Spirits Unleashed. You know, I get to level Lucian a bit, Pog. I also have this, which might level Lucian a bit, Pog. They play Spirits Unleashed anyway. I do my little bit of damage, but doesn't matter. They play Bark Beast, they play Kindred, and then I've lost. I can't beat Kindred. I don't know what I'm doing with my life, right? I have to sort of make a decision on how I want to beat the game and how I want to pressure them enough. I can't continue passing and not do anything, and I will need to develop a board so that Cytherea Matron is a genuine win con. As I played Fading Icon, and I realized that if I block like this to their attack, I actually get to level Lucian, which is really nice. I think this is really cool. The alternative is just to take 5 damage, which I don't think is an awful line, and maybe would have been better, because I can always prevent damage later on in a future turn, and it means that Kindred isn't getting the mark. That is probably correct, and it's probably correct with how I end up playing. But at the time, I really thought that I needed to pressure them down badly, and I thought the best way of doing that is to level up Lucian and actually give them pressure and play Gwen. So that's what we do. We do that. We play Gwen, and I'm going to have my audio play. This is when I knew I was going to have my audio play this time, because I think this turn is maybe the most fascinating turn of all of these games.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. I can play Gwen, and they don't have a way to kill Gwen. They can kill Lucian via killing Bark Beast. I think I'm still gonna play Gwen. Leave my mark. I'm hoping Threatening Form Up is enough for me to feel happy, or Threatening Vial as well. I don't know if I need to. I don't know if I need to Threaten Form Up. And I wonder if they're willing to block the spider. Bad man who tried to catch the doll. He missed! God, I love that voice line. Sulka. I might pass. It's that or attack with both and threaten Former, which I think I should do. Where did it go? If they take my bluff though, I just lose. I don't know if I'm allowed to. I think I actually have to pass. I think they're willing to take my bluff. That's what Cephalopod does. He takes bluffs. Like he calls it, sorry. That's the right word. He calls them. I think Cephalopod would block. What he would do is he would have Glimpse. He would block with Kindred, and then if I form up, he just glimpses, and then I lose my form up, and he draws, and he stalls out the game, and is still feeling fine. Okay. Fuck. God.
I did not know I said fuck. Oh my god. I saw.
I'm fucked. Right place would probably pass if they know I don't have form up because I didn't bother trying to threaten it. I'm gonna do this anyway. I think this is a misplay. I think they're gonna call my block, kill another unit, kill Gwen. Oh, wow. Okay. I could do Relentless Pursuit, but then they're just gonna block, right? That's the thing. Goodbye. I might be Vengeancing Kindred, which hurts into an Atrocity deck, into an Endure Atrocity deck, but it might be the right play.
All right, I know that was a long turn, but there were some really key moments there. I think not knowing about whether to threat on form up or not is a really interesting question against Cephalopod. Can he afford to take the block where he defends against, where he just runs into form up, right? I think the answer is yes. I don't know if Cephalopod knows that the answer is yes, and maybe I'm supposed to take it anyway. But that was one of the main questions. Another thing that is obvious is the fact that the Kindred mark hitting the Lucian is a consequence of me blocking with the fading icon on the previous turn. I had not played Cytherea Matron since almost a year and a half, right? I played a little bit of Cytherea Tiana recently, but I hadn't played Cytherea Matron for a long time. I have not played against Kindred for quite a while, so these gameplay patterns were just things I wasn't really used to or thinking about a lot, which is my bad. Like that's on me. So I wish I hadn't done the block with the fading icon, because that's sort of a consequence of what happened here. I just needed blockers, right? And I just lost blockers for no reason, right? That is the easiest way to put what happened with the fading icon. I lost 2 blockers for no reason when I could have had those 2 blockers to defend from this turn, which means I have the extra Lucian blocker for the next turn, which means I'm able to develop Lucian plus Cytherea Matron on the turn after, because you will realize I do draw Oblivious Islander, which is enough to get the Matron out. I could have had all of this, and I didn't, right? And it hurts, but that's just what happened, right? I think there's a lot of interesting things that turn. I also get to say he missed, and that's like the best part of every Gwen deck is saying he missed. Yeah, anyway. They develop units. I don't realize that developing units sucks for me. They kill this guy with the thing. Hey, apologies, the recording fucked up. Let me quickly go through this once more. I'm hoping this is where about we left it at. They develop this unit after the turn 5 where we lose our Lucian to the Kindred. They end up doing Hate Spike from here. Oh, excuse me. Thank you. From here to here. And what I don't realize is just how much damage this does, right? The eye has ruined everything. I assume that I can survive without playing Lucian, right? I assume that I'm vengeancing this unit, and then 4 plus 2 plus 4 plus 4 plus 5 is somehow not enough for me to be scared of Atrocity, right? This number is actually 12 plus 2 plus 5. You make this 7. This is actually 19 damage. Which means whatever... Right? Yeah. Whatever Gwen blocks is the amount of health that I save. I either save 5 health from blocking this, 4 health from blocking this, or 2 health from blocking this. If I play Lucian, I'm actually able to beat Atro by simply blocking Gwen here and Lucian here. But there's an issue with that. And the issue is that by playing Island Navi, we have... Oh, not Island Navi. Oblivious Islander. We have made this guy have Ephemeral, or the Matron, right? And the thing is, we can remove 1 unit. Lucian can trade or block into this and do into this. And then Gwen can trade positively into this. Our 2 units can trade positively into, say, this and this. But we're currently standing at about, like, 7 HP. And they're going to have 2 cards in hand. And we're not going to have our Vengeance. So either they're going to be able to go quite wide. I guess, like, we will be at 9, because Gwen will heal too. But they're going to have enough cards in hand such that they can have any sort of thing, right? They can have Atro plus 2 units. They can have 3 units. They can get lethal in a variety of ways, especially since they eventually glimpse beyond on this guy when we do our Vengeance on it. I think the correct way to play was to play Lucian. My thinking was that I needed to go for lethal, and to go for lethal, I wanted to have both of these units as challenges, right? If they don't have Atro, I know, I'm still talking in the future. This is how I end up blocking. My thing was that if they don't have Atro, I win right now, right? I get to attack multiple times with these and heal up a little bit more and survive. I think that's misguided. I think if I play Lucian, I could have survived this this turn, right? Block this and have Gwen staying around. But I also, like, if they have Hate Spike, Gwen also dies. And I liked having Lucian around to be able to trade into the board a little bit more. I don't know. It's tough. I think I should have played Lucian in order to create the blocker. I just wasn't thinking critically, because I genuinely, without doing the math, I basically just eyeballed it and said, yeah, I can probably beat Atro if they attack me, and I just block with Gwen on this guy. And my eyeballing was wrong. And it's not a great position to be in where your logic is eyeballing it in a tournament. But I mean, I did some rough counting, right? It wasn't literally just eyeballing, but I thought it was enough. And yeah, that's the game. We lose. At the end of the day, we lost because our deck lists were bad, right? Like, this deck list was unrefined. I blocked with Fading Icon without realizing how the matchup needed to work. It wasn't actually a 1-overwhelm WinCon matchup. It was a Spirits Unleashed. Like, to me, it looked like Cephalopod was playing Overwhelms, and they're actually playing Plunder, right? Like, they were playing Mirai Warden and Spirits Unleashed, and I thought they were playing, like, Alpha Wild Claw and Battle Fury, right? And I just misunderstood exactly what we were going for, and that's why the block with the Fading Icon happened. And if I had a better Shellfolk list or a better Tier Matron list, I could have done better. This week was pretty much entirely my fault, and there were multiple reasons why, and I'm hoping that I can talk about this a little bit later, but there are multiple reasons why I lost. The deck lists were bad, I played bad in the matchup, my logic was bad going into it, right? I should have picked better, stronger decks, and I went with the 3 random deck strategy thinking it was enough, but it's just not, right? There are a few things that went wrong with the games today, but Cephalopod deserved to win. He's a great player, and he's probably going to take the whole thing on his own. That's all I want to talk about. I shall see you next week for when we fight our next enemy gamer. Also, tomorrow morning, if I upload this when I think I'm uploading this, in about 5 or 6 hours, is the Tron versus Duck 5v5. I will be playing on the side of Tron, and that will be, I think, maybe live streamed on Shardox's channel. If not, I think Ikado's playing it, so Ikado's probably streaming it. So check that out if you can. You can find information on Twitter, presumably. Presumably Shardox will put something there. Thanks, that's all. Hope you enjoyed, and goodbye, try not to die. If you've got needles, put them as far away from your eyes. They're not supposed to be there. Bye.